Welcome to the Wealth Within Her podcast, the podcast dedicated to exploring the social, emotional, and psychological links between money and self-worth. In today's episode, I have the great pleasure of speaking with Carla Canino, the CEO and founder of Kindlee, a company dedicated to uncovering and addressing the biases within AI tools in the fintech industry. The episode starts off on a little bit of a serious note when we talk about how she and her business is trying to address these biases, especially supporting minorities and underrepresented groups within the fintech space. And then we delve into subjects such as empathy, personal and evolving definitions of success, validation, having a community, and defining what your true values are. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed speaking with Carla. If you do, please like, share, and subscribe for future episodes of the Wealth Within Her podcast. Carla, so nice to have you on the podcast today. I'm super excited about our conversation. We've already had a few conversations off record that I got really inspired by. So now we're actually doing a recording and going to be able to share it with the rest of the audience. So
Thank
thanks
you
for
so
joining me.
much. I'm super excited to be here. I really enjoy our chats, and I feel like, yes, indeed, we have explored so many interesting topics on empowerment, on how, women navigate the business world, the fintech world, that I'm very happy to be able to share it as well with the audience. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And maybe we can just start by you sharing a little bit about who you are, your background, coming up to where you are today, and then we go from there.
Yeah, I mean, who I am today, I think as everybody, is a kind of consequence of uh life well lived in many aspects. So now I'm the founder of Kindlee. We focus on bias reduction tools for AI, particularly for use cases in financial technology. So chatbots, interactions, KYC, and also credit risk analysis, and how unfairness and biases can seep into the financial system and essentially turn away customers for financial institutions, but of course, affect individuals, usually of say minority segments, right? And so before Kindlee, or what inspired Kindlee, has been obviously my 15 years or so career in financial technology. I've been lucky enough to, and really blessed with, a career that has exposed me to many different aspects of financial technology. So from the vendor side to being a consultant, to managing things on the merchant side as well, from optimization, new product. And also I've worked on the product side as well as the business development side. So it really has exposed me to not only, the pace of technology and the gaps in the technology and how we use machine learning and how we build, credit systems and risk systems and fraud prevention systems, but also the ways in which we misinterpret and create also friction for customers that maybe that belong to minority populations. So, the way that we sometimes design things or make assumptions from customers might neglect the needs of disabled people or elderly people, or perhaps, a pregnant or expecting mother. There are so many, complexities in the world that do not translate into the models, that I think, for me, it became obvious that there was something that we needed to do in order to safeguard, the future of both financial technology and the future of, I think, equal access to financial tools, right? Especially again for minority populations, which are already starting at a disadvantage because maybe they don't speak English that well, or whatever language they're going. If they're migrants, obviously migrants have tons of identity and many issues, language issues, understanding where they are. And so I think that my experience as an immigrant, I'm Venezuelan American. I've lived in the United States. I've, again, been lucky enough to have, lived in both Miami and San Francisco for many years. And then I moved to Europe. And so, like twice the immigrant, I'm a woman, I'm Latina, and I have a disability as well. And so, which I think is one of the aspects that has marked me the most and helped me understand, friction and gaps in the understanding of the world, in the design of products that unintentionally exclude people, right? Because that's unfortunately just the way that things work. Like, it's not like, people are set out to be mean and create products that exclude people, but that's just how, unfortunately, where we are product wise. And so, I think that this journey that I've been on has exposed me to so many different points of friction and gaps and, kind of the walls of how decisions are made, that I felt compelled exactly to explore how could we create a better financial future for people through this new wave of technology. And that's what I do. That's in broad terms who I am. And I am super super excited to be exploring this realm of ethical AI and responsible AI. I think there's it's a growing field, and hopefully it's something that people will start taking a lot more seriously and will become more embedded into the regular way that companies make decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we look at the wealth within her. We talk a lot about biases, conscious, unconscious, between humans and human interactions. But of course, I think maybe people are not so aware of yet how that then becomes built into machine and machine
Yeah,
learning, because somewhere still at the back there are people programming and creating these systems for
for
now.
sure.
And
Absolutely.
the data then perpetuates and potentially also aggravates these issues. So I think it's very
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's super complex, right? Like, there's an amalgamation of models. There's new foundational models, quote unquote, new foundational models, as well as existing machine learning models, which is essentially the very core of the financial system, right? Like, every decision made is typically with some sort of machine learning tool involved, uh, from credit scoring to fraud prevention to all of that. And so when you think about the complexities of creating and enforcing guardrails on, not only the models but the output, right? Like the deployed bot or the deployed outcome of whatever they're creating or however they're using the foundational models. It's really hard, especially with the technology that we have today. It's really hard to be able to tell whether that output, whether those decisions are indeed fair, because they do represent biases in the very industries that have, and legacy biases in the industries that have deployed these models, in the very credit decisions that we make, in the assumptions that we make about consumers, in the marketing that we in the legacy marketing that we use to create products as well. And so yeah, I mean, I think it's a really interesting topic, and we'll see how it evolves. But even how looking at how the way that things are moving, say in the US, from a social perspective
Mm.
versus European values, or versus Asian values, I think it's really interesting to be able to see how those social changes are affecting also the technology and the decisions being made on a broader level. Super serious conversation.
Yeah.
It went
Serious
really deep.
topic. It's an important topic. So thank you for sharing. Super interesting, and I love what you're doing. But maybe we can steer it a little bit to
Yeah,
um, sort of what we talk a lot about, which is feelings of self-worth, worth. How do we as women navigate, careers, but
yeah,
also a little bit where maybe you came from. You talked obviously about your background, Venezuelan American, moving. How has that affected you personally and where you are, and how are you sort of channeling all of those experiences into what you're doing now?
yeah, yeah. I mean, That's a great question. I've been doing a lot of mentoring lately, and I've been also just talking to a lot of people who are immigrants as well. And so I think there's a lot of common experience and a lot of common built value in, understanding the challenges of being an immigrant. Um, let's start with the positives, right? I think that from my perspective, being an immigrant teaches you to adapt. It teaches you adaptability, which I think is one of the most important skills that anybody can have, especially today, as we're constantly adopting new technology.
Yeah.
Um, I think it teaches you to add perspectives while being grounded in your own values. It teaches you how to challenge and question your values. And maybe on the not so positive sides, arguably, it teaches you to also let go, which
Mm-hmm.
is a really challenging skill, right? In order for us to grow, in order for us to adapt, we also have to evolve. And a lot of times that means kind of breaking away with values, or perhaps ties, or perhaps responsibilities that, that might be part of our culture, or part of who kind of tied us to who we were. And in order to get to a next version of who you are, you do have to break with that a little bit, and you have to
Mm-hmm.
accept that you're going to become a little bit of like a limbo kind of person, right? Like that's what we call third culture people, where you start adapting to, this third culture that you're becoming, which is like a kind of a nomadic person.
Mm.
So I think that, you know, that those skills, at least for me, have been really useful and really positive, both as a both in my career and also as an entrepreneur, being able to see the world and interact with the world in ways in which you understand the motivations across cultures. I think it's also incredibly important, right? It's a kind of wisdom that only experience can give you, I think. Um and I think that it also means that in many ways you always have to prove yourself to a higher degree, right? I know certainly that was the case in the US, both from being an immigrant and from being a woman. You always have to prove yourself, I think um, to not only prove that you belong, but that you are uh, the best, and that's just part of the business world in which we live as well. And in here as well, I mean, I think that part of adapting and part of building communities also, proving yourself, proving your trustworthiness, your commitment to the community, to your value to the community as well. So yeah, I think that's been a lot of my experience. I think that it also, I think it's a really cool thing because it exposes you to people that have also similar stories to yours in many ways, right? Like people that forged themselves and have led their own path. And once you start to adapt and start to evolve, I think it also expands into new paths that you wouldn't have had otherwise. I think it helps you also be more creative with your career, with your paths ahead. I don't know that I would have been an entrepreneur to the degree that I am today if perhaps I hadn't moved, or
Yes.
or perhaps I would have stayed in Miami, which is I think it's a fantastic place, but I think sometimes you need a little bit of um pressure in order to grow. And yeah, so I think that's the experience of a lot of people that I've heard, but it is really hard. It's very expensive. It's very it's incredibly expensive to move, and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And it's painful. It's painful to
Mm.
adapt to new rules, to, I think that definitely is something that we see with Kindly, right? Like when we look at the behavior of immigrants, and how they might um try to enter from a financial perspective or from a social perspective a new country, there's always mistakes that you're going to make. There's always misunderstandings in how you approach problem solving, how you approach, establishing yourself financially. On, I don't know how, like, how many people make mistakes even, buying a home and not understanding the financial landscape or the regulatory landscape of the new place that they're moving to, and then sometimes challenging things happen. So I think that's very much behind, again, the inspiration of what we do. When I first moved to the Netherlands, maybe a year after, I unfortunately ended up having a lot of physical issues because of my disability, and I found myself in a wheelchair right at the beginning of the pandemic. And I had opened a bank account, yeah, with a local bank, and because I couldn't physically go to the branch to authenticate myself, I opened the account online and deposited. And then they were like, their KYC system flagged me. And I couldn't physically like go to the branch to authenticate myself. I also was not going to expose myself to COVID. So that meant that their flagging system, their KYC system, blocked me from the account for months and months. And I couldn't, access the account until I could finally go to the branch, which I think is crazy. And so I figured, if that happened to me, how many people go through similar issues where, maybe something like that, or maybe they misunderstand a form and then they get declined because they simply didn't follow the bureaucratic whatever.
Yeah.
They made a boo-boo. And so I think that, it wakes you up to the many challenges and the many opportunities that we have, as an industry, as investors, as entrepreneurs, to create, I think, a more empathetic world by design, a
Yeah.
more, I think, wise world by design, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that story is incredible. And as you said, if it happens to you, how many more people are not in a position that you are, that you can actually then take all your experiences and your background and go out in there and say, I'm going to do something to fix it. But how many people are still out there not
Absolutely.
able to access whatever services
Yeah,
because of misunderstandings, because, as you said, of mistakes, because they're trying, but there's something that doesn't, there's no tolerance for those mistakes in the systems. And I think that's really
exactly. Exactly.
important
And
to
then
be aware of. Yeah.
I think the punishment or the consequence of those mistakes is typically, it's compound, right?
Yeah.
It's exponential because, yeah, like, luckily for me, I had other options, but there's plenty of people that do not have many options, and then it ends up costing them a lot more. They might end up going to predatory lenders or predatory
Yeah.
banking, or
Yeah.
alternative things, or they might get blocked, or they might get, a hint, or in the case of the US, a ding on their credit or something like that. So I think it's something that is, that will invariably affect minority populations to a higher degree. And it's not quite fair. It's really not quite fair. And it's also silly because, these are also people that deserve to be part of the financial ecosystem, and that are, good customers, and that also, unfortunately, the banks are losing as customer segments, right? Like, it's silly, obviously, that happened to me, but you better believe that I never opened an account with that bank again, right? Like, I closed that account and I never wanted to do business with them. So this is friction, and this is, also resulting in churn and resulting in very unhappy customers, and even in issues with customer trust. And it begs a question, at least for me, from a technology perspective. Like, we are injecting everything we do, from a financial ecosystem to, even a governmental ecosystem. Everything we do right now is very tied to, technologies, especially technologies that are foreign, created, right? Like, they're created mostly in the US. Um, and so, we are essentially outsourcing a lot of our important decisions, um, in, to yeah, black box models that we don't quite
Yeah.
understand, and they're just kind of repeating a lot of these same, biases and silly frictions that we don't really pay much attention to, but I think it's going to affect us all in a much broader way. Like, who doesn't have parents, right? Like, who doesn't have student kids that are like learning to to start in the ecosystem, who doesn't have, a pregnant family member. Like, this affects us all. It really does.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for sharing that. And you've shown a lot of resilience yourself, pushing through and pushing against some of these biases and systems that are working against so many different minorities. And because of
Oh,
what we talk about on the podcast and what the work we do, I'd love to hear a little bit about the challenges that you faced as a woman, and how you've overcome those.
that's there's different degrees of challenges and different degrees of, of, yeah, difficult experiences navigating the world. And I think that being a woman, in many ways is also uh, a power, right? It's a superpower in many ways, because of our communication, like, because of the ability to find the points of agreement. I think women are much better at that, at finding consensus, at finding, pragmatic ways to go forward, at knowing when to compromise. Like, all of these things are extremely positive leadership traits and characteristics that are nurtured in women to a different degree. And I would say, also, both as a woman and as a disabled person, I think creativity is incredibly important. It sounds so silly because, like, one of the things that I've always nurtured is uh, both joy, which I think is incredibly important, especially given what I work on, right? Like, it's really challenging to be talking all the time about, some of these things that can feel very, disempowering, very draining, right? But at the same time, like, you have to nurture your joy, so you can find the I think so you can find the third solution. I was talking to someone recently, with Mariam, one of my mentees. Hi, Mariam. And so I was telling her there's always three solutions, especially in the business world, right? Like, there's the solution that is costly, there's a solution that is expected and easy, right? Like the lazy solution. And I always say that there's always a wild card. And the wild card solution, I think, is, it's where you implement a lot of creativity. And it typically is the best solution because it's a it's a leap forward solution, right? It's something that finds maybe a smaller compromise on both sides, but the gains are exponential. And I think that when you have a disability or you're a woman, but in this particular case, I want to talk about disability, you have to find ways to achieve the same things, but navigating the world differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have to find ways to, maybe, at least in my case, do a lot of impact with a little energy, which is, I know it sounds lazy, but it really does force you to become creative, to prioritize a lot, to focus on what the end goal of something is, to focus even on whether or not something is worth it. Because how many times have we been in rooms where we are, everybody's kind of freaking out about making the decision, whether or not we should be doing ABC, and when you look at it, you realize that these are old goals and we should be aiming for, 4, 5, 6, like something else. And so I think that, these are superpowers that we don't realize. Like, we think about us as minorities, as, being the underdog, but the reality is, it's I'm sorry, I'm laughing because this comes to the concept of adaptability again.
Yeah.
Evolution is not about the strongest, right? Evolution is about the most adaptable.
Yeah.
And,
Mm.
like, you have to adapt so much as a woman or as a minority. That's part of the muscle that you work on, and you have to develop creativity, and then you start developing, understanding gaps in markets, right? Like, you start understanding consumer behavior in a different way. You start understanding even, maybe cultural gaps that other people don't understand, that give you an edge. And so I think that's how
Mm.
I've learned to navigate the challenges. It's because, like, these things, like, challenges and problems come every day.
Yeah.
Um, but your ability to, like, your experience in the world by having to kind of web your own path, it both forces you to think differently, forces you to not necessarily take shortcuts, but, take bridges or build bridges in many ways. And it forces you to redefine yourself constantly. And I think that's what's needed in this world. Like, in order to kind of grow in the path, you have to redefine yourself. I like to tell people also that, you know, there's what you create and what you build, but it's also the community that you build around you.
Mm,
Because,
yeah.
and it's really important, I think, to continue always to recreate that community and to invest in that community and to align with your values, your internal values. Because yeah, we are not successful in isolation, right?
Yeah.
And I think that actually this was not me, this was Veronique Steiner in recently at Money 2020. One of the best pieces of advice that she gave was to, like, everybody needs to have their own board of directors, like,
Hmm.
for their life,
Yeah.
not only
Nice.
for the startup, but for your
Yeah, yeah,
life.
yeah,
And I
yeah, yeah.
thought that was brilliant. And it's a little bit like that, right? Like, the community that you build, the people that you, interact with and nurture yourself and learn from, I think are going to have a huge impact on where you go. And so I think it's incredibly important to be very, self-aware on what your values and what your paths and what your non-negotiables and who you are as a person. And I think that having that clear actually opens a lot of doors. It maybe closes a lot of wrong doors, and a lot of times you feel in limbo, right? But
Yeah.
I think that it opens the right doors eventually. It really does lead you in a path of discovery and of, a different kind of belonging, which I
Yeah.
think is really cool. I think it's a aligned belonging with who you are, and like the motivations and the values of people. It's a completely different belonging than if you grow up together in a place, or if you go to school to, in a particular place, da da da. I think it's beautiful. I think it's a superpower as well, being able to build that community and having that full knowledge of your values and who you are, and resonating in that energy. I think is super, super important.
Yeah, that's really nice, actually. I like that. How can you give some example of how you've done that for yourself? How has that, how has that looked like for you?
Yeah. I mean, I think my company is definitely a reflection of that. Like, the people that have helped me and that have like supported me, sponsored me through this are by definition people who care about creating a responsible economic future for people, and care about the both the risks and the opportunity to have technology that is able to, enable innovation in a super responsible way. Is people that also have, I think, a higher degree of integrity in many ways, right? Like, they're impulsed not by just the will to make money, but to truly, make technology of impact and also build each other up. And I think that, in my social life as well, like the people that I spend my time with, even if we don't see each other all the time, are people that are also, you know, mm, very incredibly high standards people, also people that are not judgmental, right? They're not jumping to conclusions, they're more nurturing than they are depleting, right? I think that uh most of my close friends are people who have, well, been very successful in many ways, but also have had paths that are maybe more challenging, and have overcome something that has made them, I think, reprioritize their values and reprioritize like the way that they interact with the world as well. So I think I'm very blessed with both, like being able to forge something that is very aligned with my values, such as Kindly. I think it's transformed the way that I live my life, and I feel like I'm doing the right thing for me, and hopefully for for everybody as well. But it also has transformed the way that I look at my social world, and the energy exchange between your friends and your community. Um, yeah, I think that if you don't admire the community that you have around you, if you haven't built something with people that you admire in one way or another, right? Like in the quality of people that they are, in the success that they've had, the commitment that they've had, then I think it's time to look at, what qualities you admire in yourself as well, and what are you know, your end goals, and maybe create a little bit, shape the community around you based on that.
Hmm. Yeah, I think community is super important. And as you said, to build the right community, you have to be aware of your own values. So
Exactly.
super important. But then on the other hand, what we see a lot, and I guess especially for women, is the tendency to try to align instead, our values and our definitions of success with
Mm,
what we see externally, because
mm,
they are to some extent imposed on us, and
yeah,
have to be
yeah,
quite strong to
yeah.
go against that.
It's completely true. Oof, that's such a good point. That is a good point and a caveat, right? Like I do have uh I think now, I don't think I always was like that. I think I was kind of meek many years ago, like many of us, right? Like like women are not socialized to be challenging, and
Yeah.
and push boundaries and whatnot. I think that to me, it was definitely a learned skill, a nurtured skill, a skill that I had to convince myself to adapt, which is literally the skill of confidence and the skill of looking at yourself, evaluating who you are, and looking back and being like, oh yeah, I did that. And yes, I took that tumble and it hurt, but here I am again. And, own your failures because they're super important too. I think that it is difficult, it's not positively perceived. Oh yes, we had that conversation too. I forgot about that. Which is, yeah, like the times, it's funny. There's so many times where myself and the women around me have been humbled, right? Or have been attempted to be humbled when they are confident. And it really does take a lot of confidence, a lot of um I mean, it really truly is 100% self-confidence and the ability to be okay being by yourself and reframing and reinventing yourself, because not everybody's going to be comfortable with you speaking out as a woman. Not everybody's going to be comfortable with you challenging them, intellectually as a woman. And you have to be okay being the quote unquote villain. You have to be okay sometimes making mistakes, because, part of challenging other people is also saying, hey, you know what? We had that conversation and I'm wrong. And being able to have those conversations too. But I think that um it's painful, right? It's painful because it's a form of rejection. It's a form of um yeah, a reductive kind of behavior from people a lot of times, or which you have to just push through and understand that it's about them, it's not about you. You have to push through and understand that um like your mission is more important than this person's attitude, or this circle not believing you. And also every time that anything important has been achieved, it has been achieved through you know pushbacks and challenges and people not believing you. Like disbelief is, skepticism is baked in with the process of innovation as well, or becoming anything new, or evolving in your career. So I think you just have to, like, build that thick skin in many ways and push forward and remember and like again, go back to your community to remind you of who you are, even when that skin
Mm,
gets pierced, right? I'm so lucky to have the both the advisors, the mentors that I have, the friends that I have, because when I get punched and I've been like, oh, should I quit? Or like, like this
yeah,
is really difficult, or, which happens to all of us, they are there to remind me of what's important, to remind me of the different paths, to remind me of, this is the path. Like it's not supposed to be easy. It's like these are the things that happen, and that like this is what makes you better. And so I think that the biggest piece of advice that I will have for people is to embrace those challenges and to embrace those moments of reductiveness or discomfort, and to stand up for yourself. Really,
yeah.
stand up for yourself. Do it. Snap
I mean,
back.
absolutely. And yet it's so difficult. But I really love what you said, that you said, the skill of confidence, because I
Yeah.
think as women, we kind of look at others externally, and maybe men in particular, and we think it's
Yeah.
just something that you have or you don't have, but it's something that you can actually develop. And I think that
Absolutely.
society in many ways helps boys and therefore men to develop confidence naturally, because they
Yeah.
are encouraged to take more risks, to climb the
Yes.
trees, to fall over and try again, whereas the
Yes.
girls are protected and helped along and
Yes.
rewarded for not getting dirty and doing the nice
Exactly.
chores. And so there's no space to practice that
Yeah.
sort of
You have to
confidence.
love your scars. And if no one
Hmm.
teaches you to love your scars,
Yeah,
then you
yeah,
don't, then you're afraid of falling. And if you're afraid of falling, you never try anything. If you never
yeah.
try anything, you never grow. So I have a lot of scars.
Beautiful. And
Figuratively
yeah,
and
I mean, and you
literally.
look at them and you remind yourself of what you've
But that's
achieved.
confidence. I don't
Yeah,
know. I mean, I don't remember exactly who said this. It might have been like one of the top, like, Brené Brown or Simon Sinek or
yeah,
something. But confidence is exactly that, is, like confidence gets built by your experience, by committing to yourself and,
yeah,
um, eh, 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 honoring that commitment to yourself, honoring, and looking back and being proud of the missteps too, because that's exactly how you learn. Otherwise, no one would have ever achieved anything. Like
yeah, yeah,
literally, that's the process. That's a scientific process. That's the process to create any company, anything, anything new. And you have to be okay with embracing failure, and you have to be okay embracing punches. And that's how you get a thick skin. It's that process. It's just how it works. And so I think that in fact, I think women are very good at pain, and
yeah,
very good at pain, and very good at, trying something again and again and again and again. We're just quiet about it. I
yeah.
think we're
I think
quiet
so.
about it.
We're quiet about it because, and I think that really does come back to this idea of like, at least to the outside world, there is an expectation of being perfect, of getting
Yeah.
it right the first time, because
Yeah.
that's how we've been rewarded, historically, but also in our own generation as kids. I see big differences there still. And yeah, public failure is not part of what girls and women are
Yeah.
encouraged to
Yeah.
do.
Absolutely.
But that's,
Absolutely.
I think, where the community, as you said, also comes in as being important, because there you have that safe space to
Yes.
fail in public, but in a safe environment. And I think that, yeah,
Absolutely.
that's important.
Yeah. I mean, part of evolving, part of becoming leaders, part of growing up also is dealing with shame, right? Like learning to
Mhm.
deal with the embarrassment of failure. It's part of emotional maturity as well.
Yeah,
And I think a lot of us like run from that, run from
yeah,
discomfort. I think, again, kind of bringing back the whole point of like a lot of aspects of being a minority are actually superpowers. Is
yeah,
when you grow up with a disability, you're used to people staring at you, and you're used to
yeah,
falling 50 times and struggling with stupid little things that people usually get it easily, right? Like, and that means that I no longer care about those. Like, I have no buffer to, I don't care. So I think that is a huge superpower. It's like the
mm,
learning to not care, learning to own it, learning to be like, haha, I did this and this is what I learned. Wait, did I tell you about this? This is so hippie, but I think it's super useful.
Yeah.
So years ago I went to this, oh, I'm so sorry. This is like a corny story, but I think it's very relevant. Um, I went to Bali as people do, and I did this retreat, and I went to this awesome guru who specifically asked not to be called named in places because he didn't want to get too popular. Look at him. Um, he was really something. He was quite something. But aside from, his personality, bigger than life, and he was really, really wise. And one of the main thing that he kept on asking me, and he told me to keep with me, is what did you learn? Like
Hmm.
when you go through something good, what did you learn?
Mm.
You
Yeah.
go through something bad, what did you learn? And I am again a super hippie, and so I implemented that even in my like one-on-ones in my retros for my product meetings, like for everything, because I think it's exactly that, right? I think we jump as people, we jump to conclusion and we jump to judgment.
Mm. Yeah.
We jump to judging ourselves into like a negative side of judgment, right? But we don't break down things in a more objective way. Like, okay, what did I learn? You
Yeah.
know, what did I learn positive? What did I learn negative? What did I learn about me and about the other person?
Mm.
What did I learn about this particular failure? And that is like coincidentally, that is the definition of science.
Yeah. Mm.
That's science.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
observe something. What
And
did
yeah.
we learn from
Yeah.
it? Break down
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
move
Yeah.
on. That
Amazing.
is the
Yeah.
process of science. And so I think that if we learn to view ourselves a little bit more scientifically and we ask, what did I learn? And we turn down the shame and we see it as a learning process, as part of the learning process,
Yeah.
I think we can snap out of, maybe our own way, like step out of, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's also a nice way, if you're confronted, which sometimes women are worried about what are other people going to think, but you can always come back with that. And I've seen that sometimes in sports interview. Well, this is what I learned from what happened. And that kind of pushes the attention a little bit away from yourself and your person, which again is something that women sometimes I find struggle with,
Yeah,
not having the ability to separate you as a person from the things that you've done. But if you can say, well, this is what I learned from what happened, then you create a little bit that distance, and you can
yeah,
also push back if you feel, attacked or scrutinized or
absolutely.
so
Yeah.
I love that. What did you learn?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think also there's a smaller like mini superpower that I would suggest, a mini technique, which
Yeah.
is, when someone, I mean, depends on the situation, right? But obviously everything with a grain of salt. But um, when someone is criticizing you or putting you down, it's also an admission of what they can't see or they can't value or what they're insecure about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, and this happens to women a lot, and this is very important, and we should say it out loud all the time. People criticize your idea so you don't have the confidence to put it out because they want to steal your idea later. This
Hmm.
happens a lot,
Mm-hmm.
a lot. So push
Yeah.
back, own your
Yeah.
idea, claim it, tell other people about, like, be annoying about you protecting your stuff and supporting your stuff. But also, I mean, obviously, you know, look at the validity of the feedback that they're giving you and the manner in which it's given. Um, I think that a lot of times people are well intentioned as well, and they
Yeah.
might,
No,
again,
that's good.
maybe underestimate you. I think that happens a lot as well. Underestimate like the scope of your considerations on when you're solving something or you're bringing forward an idea. They're underestimating, this happens a lot. And so I think it's also, um, a really good way to understand how people think, how people are evaluating an idea, not only about you, but even if it's someone that loves you and they're maybe not
Mhm.
seeing it, or like a coach or something. I think it's a really good way for you to see how other people think about a problem and how other people solve that problem. So you can maybe adjust, or, maybe you are seeing that something that no one else is seeing, and that's your beauty and that's your advantage. And that's, something that I think it's important that each one of us investigates. Like your point of view is also, what makes you you.
Yeah.
So how is your point of view maybe an advantage for you?
Nice. I know we don't have that much time left, but I did want to ask a little bit about money and success and your
Oh,
definitions of money and success, because it is one
yes.
of the big topics that we have on the podcast.
Such a great conversation. I think that's also part of the redefining of yourself and the constant questioning of your values and stuff is defining what success is for you. And, I think we talked about this, like success for me meant different things at different stages of my life, right? Like from basic survival to buying things that I didn't need to, going to all the parties and, all, all the things to nurture my dopamine to, yes, I still go shopping. I think that's important. I like it. But I buy responsibly now, which is, I think my definition of success has shifted a lot because it used to be a lot about, again, I think in the beginning of my life, a lot more about survival and adaptability and success was, maybe belonging to a group that was, very respected in Miami or, getting an XYZ job that paid well and was centrally located, like basic things, right? Like, and then and then success for me meant more, oh, I get to, maybe explore some of the areas that I want to explore more. And so I went back to school and I did blah, blah, blah. And, you know, um, I really value curiosity. So success for me was also being able to jump into the startup world and learn from investors and learn from the startup world. This was many, many years ago. Or at some point, it also was being involved. Like I used to work in the entertainment world as well. And so
Mm.
being part of that at all was a huge success. But then as things have evolved and of course, I had a beautiful run working for several financial technology companies. And of course, those roles are typically very well paid. So financial comfort at some point was also my main definition of success. But I think that at some point, based on who I was becoming, the problems that I saw in the world, my particular, set of skills, my, desire to shape the world that I exist in, that I live in. For me, that definition of success became more about working on things of impact. If you
Mm.
are a Buddhist, you know that, right speech, right work, is one of the things that, kind of, are part of the Eightfold Path. And I really craved working on things that I thought were of impact and of, um, you know, hopefully of positive influence to the world, and surrounding myself with people that wanted the same and that were, are leaning in the same direction. I think that's my new definition of success, like being able to truly have an impact, being able to um shape the direction of, hopefully the financial future, or even, nurturing other entrepreneurs and other people to consider the impact and consider the, the future of our field. I think it's also very much I would consider myself successful if that's something that I can like put a dent on. And I think, in many ways I'm already super successful because I've already chosen this path. I've already taken it's difficult, right? To choose, instead of making, I don't know, 10,000, a month, in a different career. It's difficult to choose. Okay, no, I'm taking the startup world, which is full of uncertainty,
Mm.
is full of difficulties. Um, but you get to shape your future and lead your own boat and create your own community around this and, shape something that you truly believe in. I think just having the opportunity to do that, I think, getting into something like having the validation from something like Techstars or, Holland Fintech, more locally, or, even the local community being embraced by the local community, I think that already is hugely successful. Like the looking at the kind of doors and the kind of communities that I'm being a part of now versus 2 years ago, I think that's, already a beautiful path. We'll see where things lead. But I think that, yeah, success should be shaped by your values.
Mhm.
Not
Mm.
necessarily only about the financial gains, which I think super important. That's how we fuel a lot of this stuff anyway. But I also think that that comes with it. When you're pursuing this particular definition of success, I think, and so far that has been my experience, the money follows, and the prosperity follows, and everything else kind of arranges itself. Again, coming from a hippie, but I have experienced that. I have experienced that to be true.
Well, I'm a hippie as well, as you know.
Sure.
But what I really like is also what you're just doing is like recognizing where you are already successful, because I think it's so easy to always strive for something in the future, but being able to stop and see, well, I am already that future version of myself in these ways. I am successful, I am recognized, in what I'm striving towards. Of course you can continue to strive, but where you can recognize where you're already being successful. I mean, it
Absolutely.
again, when if from the hippie perspective, it's like manifesting, and it's like bringing
Yeah,
in and being grateful for what you already have
exactly
and what
that.
you've already achieved.
It's being grateful. I think that being in that energy of gratitude towards yourself too,
Yeah.
because you've made tough choices. You've stood
Yeah.
up for yourself because you've, followed your intuition or whatever, or, I think that is exactly right. Like being in that energy of gratitude is what opens the door to the next thing.
Mm.
And I mean, I feel like we all go through this, right? Like we all get discouraged and we get to this like ungrateful place, you know, and we find that kernel of gratitude again, and we push forward. I think that gratitude is also a practice and a skill that we need to navigate and that we need to nurture in order to have any kind of success.
Amen. I agree. Nice. Um, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to share that is important to you?
I think that we talk a lot about what we can take, or what kind of community or people or energy, and I'm talking about more maybe a lot of, from what I hear, a lot of younger people are very
Mhm.
much about, you know, um, yeah, surrounding yourself with the right energy and all of that, which I super agree with. But we don't talk enough about our own responsibility in what we give to these communities, how we show up, what kind of
Mm.
commitment. And as I say that, I feel very hypocritical because a lot of times I'm not showing up because, I'm prioritizing Kindly, and, the life of a founder is very different. But I also think that, I do my best at giving back, at mentoring, at, showing up for my closest friends. I think it's important that we evaluate ourselves and how we're showing up and how we're listening to other people, how we're valuing and validating other people's ideas, challenges, goals. Because not only do we obviously, give them, the very validation and the very uh, like the capacity to be seen, which I think it's important as humans and as, even as leaders, right? You cannot be a leader if you're not seeing the people, if you're not listening, if you're not validating and valuing them. But it also creates a sense of responsibility in us as well, on like not be passive, and on having accountability for our mistakes, or having accountability
Mhm.
for what we commit and what we don't commit. And in that, again, we realize when we have been unfairly judgmental. We realize when we have created biases ourselves. We start realizing in that accountability, in that process of looking at ourselves, we realize all the ways in which we also need to grow, in which we also need to show up for others. For the men in the room, this, like, I think validating women's experiences is the most important skill that you can nurture and work on and like make it a rule in your life is, yeah, if a woman says something, she already took probably, it took her a lot of courage for her to express herself. Um, Validate her, like, nurture her ideas. Be the wind under her wings. Again, I'm full of corny phrases today, but but I think that's so important. We forget also to embrace other people, to your friends, to
Mm.
other founders. This is this is the motto of Techstars: is give first, and I think
Wow, yeah,
that
I
is
didn't know that.
genius,
Yeah,
across the board
yeah,
genius. Give first, listen, like validate the other person, be there as a sounding board. Do not take away someone's spark by criticizing them or by being judgmental or by projecting your own insecurities on them. And that's a lot to the men. But in general, right? I think in general, it's a good reminder for all of us. I would leave us with that, like learn to fuel other people and spark other people up. And with that, you spark yourself up too.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, validating. Yeah, for me, it's so
It's not
important. I really recognize that also when you haven't felt validated, and as you said, the courage of actually, in a professional setting or in a personal setting or in a relationship, taking the courage to share something and then not being validated for something that you have,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
shared. That,
Absolutely.
mm,
Absolutely. I feel like that's how we are seen.
yeah,
It's truly how we're seen.
yeah, yeah, and then I mean, it often that's all it takes. It's just being seen. Yes, I see you, I hear you. That's it. And
Quite
then
literally.
everything else can happen after that. But that's at least the first very, very important step. So,
That
yeah.
is the very first step. And it's unfortunately a step that requires empathy
Yeah.
and respect, and not everybody. The skill of empathy. Okay, maybe we leave this like this should be the final, kernel of wisdom is, I think we all need to nurture our empathy. Like, I think the more experiences in life that you've had, you become more empathetic.
Yeah.
And I do think that's definitely my number one superpower, is
Mm.
precisely because I've lived so many difficult things.
Mm.
My understanding of other people's pains, even at their ugliest, is, at the most difficult. Like, I get it. I get why someone, might behave in an XYZ way. But it does require a different kind of intelligence. It's
Yes.
very purposeful. It's very uncomfortable to be empathetic. You have to embrace the discomfort in that way. It's extremely uncomfortable, especially for men. I
Yeah.
think, because it's not a skill that is as nurtured as it is for women. And overall, we don't want to be in discomfort. We don't, a lot of times we feel really uncomfortable even listening to someone's painful story, right? We feel like that energy is being seeped. And so I think that learning how to be empathetic and validating other people without draining your energy, and, you know, both learning to be there for one another, and learning to find ways in which you can help each other.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what makes you a better human. That's what makes you intelligent. That's what makes you also a civilized human being,
Mm.
because
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
civilization is basically how we treat the most
Yeah.
vulnerable
Yeah.
people. And if
Yeah.
we don't have empathy, if we don't have that level of intelligence, if we don't have that basic skill, we are not civilized.
Wow. I think, yeah, I just thought that was really
I
important
woke up
also
angry
because
today. No, just kidding. I said I woke up angry today with that one. Just kidding.
no. But because I mean, I realize now in this conversation and what you just said, I focus quite a lot on what women or girls are not taught around confidence and so on. But what you just said, there's also in that way society treats girls and boys differently. There's definitely things that boys are not taught either, like you said, empathy, and that
Empathy.
is a skill that they
Oh,
have to often learn on their own, or when they become adults, and it's a struggle as well. And so I
yes.
think for us
Ex-
women who probably have more of that naturally from childhood, we also have to show that empathy to the men, and that they are, it's something that they're
Yeah,
learning, and that they have to acquire, that they didn't develop from,
yeah,
yeah, from an early
yeah,
age.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
tricky, right? Because man, we could talk about this is I feel like we open a can of worms that we could talk about
Yeah.
for a while, but empathy is very tricky to teach because you need relatability, right? And they
Mm.
cannot relate a lot of times to like they cannot relate to period pain. They cannot relate to
Yeah.
cramps. They can relate to, the
Yeah.
at least, to many women, challenges of pregnancy and delivery. They don't, they cannot relate to being infantilized in a conversation. They cannot
Yeah.
relate to being any of these things. And so I think it's always a beautiful conversation when men expand their empathy and expand their like emotional intelligence tool to the benefit of them or of those around them, right? Like, because sometimes people can learn those things to be toxic and then, be manipulative and stuff. But I think that it's beautiful when you see it, when you see that, people start lighting up and understanding, oh wow, um like it's simply a blind spot. It's simply a blind spot. I love also when, as my friends have grown up and have kids and become parents and become, girl dads, how beautiful they have evolved. Like they have softened up. A lot of my friends have become a lot calmer and a lot more gentle in the way that they talk, and a lot less reactive, uh, a lot less like jumping to conclusions kind of person. But for both, like for for dads of all types. But I think that it's very noticeable for me when I talk to my friends that have little girls. And I think uh it's the number one thing that we should aspire as, as a society, is to nurture exactly that, nurture that capacity to to relate to the pains of one another, to relate to maybe, maybe that way we will all be gentler and we will all be
Yeah.
more considerate in general.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. As you said, we kind of the conversation shift, and there's like a whole new
No,
conversation to have.
I
But
know.
I think
Part
maybe
two.
we take that as, yeah, part two.
Yes,
We'd love to have you back to continue those conversations.
it's gonna be
But I
so
think
much
it's
fun. I
time
really enjoyed
to
it.
finish. Um, so thank you so much, Carla, for joining me and talking about everything that you're doing with Kindly, and all your other wisdom, the
Thank
hippie
you.
side, and the scientific side, and everything in between. I loved it.
This is
So
great.
thank you
Thank you
so
so, so
much.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you for
I
letting
really
me,
enjoyed
thank you so much for having me, and thank you for letting me ramble on all of these super interesting and beautiful topics that I'm very passionate about. So thank you so much for having
it.
me.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Of
Take care.
course, you too.
Bye.
Talk to you soon. Bye.